Well, Hunter Biden is back, putting himself in the spotlight after going on an unhinged rant just a couple of weeks ago where he threw all the Democrats under the bus. He's back on Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan's podcast where he spoke about Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump, and he talked about what a cruel, cruel 4 years it was when his father was president.
Although it has been kind of a cruel 4 years in many ways, I'm like eternally grateful for right where I am right now. As much as these people have kind of been the ultimate expression of evil, at least in my lifetime, is that it kind of fills me with an enormous sense of purpose.
Joining us now is Senior Editor-at-Large at Newsweek, Josh Hammer. Josh, it's great to see you. So the man with the laptop from hell who got a pardon from the big guy is playing the victim card. But I want to get your thoughts. Why does Hunter Biden keep popping up for interviews? You know, is this his way of fighting Gavin Newsom for the spotlight? Is he going to run?
Look, I think that Hunter Biden is someone, Gabriella, who literally does not know anything other than the limelight. I mean, this is someone whose father, Joe Biden, was in politics for a half century. I mean, literally from the early 1970s until last year. I guess until earlier this year, January 2025. I mean, this is someone who literally just simply doesn't know any other way other than to try to get in front of the cameras there, try to insert himself into the public narrative. He's clearly a bit of an egomaniac. I mean, I think there's a lot of data points over the years that would give that away. Everything that we know about his various addictions and the laptop there and all of his comments, the media over the years, he just has an insatiable desire to stay relevant. I guess the big question I think a lot of folks are starting to think is, does this guy actually want to run for office? I mean, it sounds so it sounds so crazy to say. Oh, it's a profoundly scary thought. I mean, I have to conclude that the answer is no. I don't think Democrats are quite that suicidal. They have not learned many lessons from 2024, but surely trotting out, this drug-addled, maniac to run for president is not exactly their best calling card there. But I think it's even simpler than that, Gabriella. He just doesn't know how to resist the limelight. So when someone asks him to come on the show, he's going to say yes. Yeah,
I think that's an excellent point. We're only 6 months into Trump 2.0, but speculation has already begun about who will be the heir to the MAGA movement. So who will be the Republican presidential candidate in 2028? And Donald Trump was asked about this, and he seemed to agree that J.D. Vance is the favourite.
Do you agree that the heir apparent to MAGA is J.D. Vance?
Well, I think most likely, in all fairness, he's the vice president. I think Marco is also somebody that maybe would get together with J.D. in some form. I also think we have incredible people, some of the people on the stage right here. So it's too early, obviously, to talk about it, but certainly he's doing a great job, and he would be probably favored at this point.
It's interesting. That's a pretty clear response from the president. He didn't really dodge the question.
Well, Donald Trump is not necessarily one, Gabrielle, to dodge questions. I mean, this is a guy he's made an entire career basically of calling it like he sees it, going back to the old New York City tabloid days of the 1970s, 1980s. Look, I mean, this was half the purpose of Donald Trump selecting J.D. Vance. I mean, this was half the purpose of selecting someone who was basically, well, half his age, actually. I mean, J.D. Vance just turned 41 years old. So Donald Trump made a decision in selecting such a young vice president of the millennial generation. He was already back then, last summer, around the time of the RNC in Milwaukee, he made a very deliberate, conscientious decision to put a serious thumb on the scale in terms of who the presumptive successor to the MAGA throne would be. Now, having said that, he could have just answered the question and said, J.D. Vance, next question. He didn't say that, obviously. He said Marco Rubio might be involved, plenty of people in this room. It's going to be a competitive primary. This is not J.D. Vance, I think, according to all the betting markets, is the odds favored right now. And that seems pretty clear to me. But it's going to be a competitive primary. And it's also a very, very long ways away at this particular juncture there. And, JD is going to have to pick up some issues, I think, to really kind of double down, hone in on those issues. For the first few months of this presidency, Gabrielle, I think that he was kind of clouded out a little bit by Elon Musk. Elon Musk was not technically vice president, but he was getting a lot of headlines, Doge and all that there. And in some respects, JD was not necessarily front of the newspapers other than that excellent speech he gave in Munich, Germany back in February. So, now that Elon is out of the picture and we're in the August recess, in the second half of this year, going into 2026, I'm going to be looking very carefully to see what specific issues JD takes up there and what kind of impact he can make on those issues.
Okay, well, let's turn to anti-Israel activist and former Columbia University graduate Mimmude Khalil. As we know, he was involved in all those anti-Israel demonstrations. And now in a recent interview with the New York Times, he defended the October 7 terror attack by Hamas. He appeared on the Ezra Klein Show podcast, and he said, although he thinks that the Hamas attack that killed more than 1,200 people and captured 250, and as we know, 50 hostages are still being held in Gaza in terror tunnels, this was just a way for Gaza to be heard. Listen to this.
I think it's more the latter, like just to break the cycle, to break that Palestinians are not being heard. And to me, it's a desperate attempt to the word that Palestinians are here, that Palestinians are part of the equation. That was my interpretation of why Hamas did the October 7 attacks on Israel.
It's just so sick. I just don't understand how anyone could rationalize it.
Well, first of all, shame on Ezra Klein. Shame on Ezra Klein for having this person on his show. Ezra has a very highly ranked liberal left of center podcast. This is a disgusting editorial decision to even have this guy on the show in the first place. I mean, he was taken in by ICE. He was in the process of getting removed there for his active support for U.S. recognized foreign terrorist organization there. But, Gabriella, this clip that we've just seen, and it is everything that you say, it is abhorrent, it is appalling. It's worth remembering just some of these very specific things that happened. I've been to the Gaza envelope. I've walked through the kibbutz of Kfar Aza. I've seen the blood on the walls. I've seen the children's toys in the street. I've seen it all for myself. So I would be interested to see if this individual, Mimmude Khalil, will be willing to look in the face of a grieving mother whose child was murdered, whose daughter was sexually mutilated and raped and then killed. I mean, horrific stuff's there. But listening to the specific way that he describes this clip, a desperate act to be heard, I can't help but think of the old Stalinist line from the Soviet Union era, that one death is a tragedy, but 1,000 deaths is a statistic. That's kind of the same mentality that I hear when I listen to Mimmude Khalil speak. I mean, let's not forget that 1,200 people, roughly speaking, lost their lives. There were 250 others who were taken hostage, dozens, if not hundreds more, who were raped and lived to tell the tale there. He's really channeling this far left Stalinist mentality of just kind of aggregating deaths and calling it kind of just a statistic. It's disgusting stuff. And really, I kind of come back to what I said at the beginning. Shame on Ezra Klein for giving this guy a platform in the first place.
Absolutely. No, I've been to Kfar Aza as well, and the site of the Nova Music Festival, and that has stayed with me there. The energy on the ground there was absolutely terrifying. And yeah, I agree. Shame on Ezra Klein. Now, the New York Times is also reporting that elite colleges, Columbia and Brown, they must disclose their admissions and race data following their settlement with President Trump. So this is essentially because the Trump administration has been pushing colleges to use, wait for it, merit-based processes. What a concept that is, rather than focusing on DEI. Do you welcome this?
Oh, 1,000%. Look, I mean, all of this should have happened 2 years ago. It was actually the summer of 2023 that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard College case that so-called affirmative action, aka anti-white racism when it comes to university admissions. The court ruled over 2 years ago that this is illegal, that it violates the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. What Donald Trump did back in January was he signed an executive order, which basically said that according to that Supreme Court decision, we are going to interpret all DEI measures on university campuses, in the federal government, and elsewhere as also being unconstitutional and a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as well. So all of this is pursuant to that, but it should have happened a very, very long time ago. The craziest thing to me, Gabrielle, is, the lawyers, and these are very, very sophisticated lawyers who are representing these universities there. I mean, major white shoe law firms there. These universities are dragging out this process for months and months. In the case of Columbia, ultimately settling for $200 million. Harvard's rumored to potentially settle for $500 million. And literally for what? I mean, think about what they're actually arguing. They're actually taking an affirmative stance that they have the right, perhaps even the duty or the obligation to discriminate on the basis of race. That's actually what they are doing. A lot of the media here in the United States frame this as the Trump administration cracking down on anti-Semitism. That's definitely part of it, but it's actually only part of it. Maybe even only a small part of it, because the broader part of it is they are literally just saying, as you correctly framed it at the outset, they're just saying you have to abide by Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. You have to abide by the 14th Amendment. You can't discriminate on the basis of race, sex, national origin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There, the fact that the universities are fighting this tooth and nail to their seeming death, that's the craziest part of it all to me.
Absolutely. House Republicans have subpoenaed nearly a dozen former federal officials and politicians, including Bill and Hillary Clinton, amid an expanding investigation into pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. As we know, Bill Clinton, he reportedly flew on Epstein's jet, the Lolita Express, up to 26 times. Josh, what do you make of this? Are you confident or not really that we'll really get more information about Epstein and those around him from this investigation?
Well, I personally can't wait to see Clinton go. That is Bill Clinton, Slick Willie himself. I can't wait to see Slick Willie go before the House Oversight Committee, Congressman James Comer of Kentucky. I mean, that's going to be must-see TV. I mean, make me a fat bag of popcorn. And I'll put my feet on the table, and I'll watch that all day long. I mean, you know, Gabriella, when Pam Bondi and Kash Patel at the DOJ and the FBI released, to mixed reaction at best, their announcement that there was no list, that Epstein did indeed kill himself and so forth there, it struck me right away that one of the most obvious things that Trump's defenders should have done even at that time was say, wait, you're gonna say that Donald Trump is covering up because he might be in the Epstein files? Have you talked about Bill Clinton, this guy who was literally on the plane 26 times? Yeah, I mean, the Wall Street Journal currently being sued by Donald Trump there. I mean, they had this article there talking about this, you know, this 50th birthday card Trump there. Maybe he wrote it, maybe he didn't. I don't know. We'll see what the lawsuit happens there. But, you know, on the one hand, you have Donald Trump allegedly doing his 50th birthday card once with like a little, lascivious drawing. On the other hand, we literally know for a fact, based on the manifest, that Clinton was on this plane dozens of times there. So it's really just absurd. Now, where is this ultimately going to go? I don't know. Apparently, there was actually just a major meeting in Washington just over the past 12 to 16 hours or so between J.D. Vance and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi trying to talk about what the administration's response should be to the Epstein files. Gabrielle, my personal take is essentially as follows. I am not a huge fan of the way the administration has handled this. I also think that it is very, very, very far from the median Trump voters' primary concern there. The Trump administration is currently winning on virtually all fronts. They are firing on all cylinders right now. And I think that the sooner they can find some way to try to satisfy all sides, move on, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, finally, it's been revealed and reported that two of the largest banks kicked Donald Trump and his money out following pressure from the Biden administration's banking regulators after the January 6th riots. So the New York Post reports that JP Morgan and Bank of America debanked President Trump. Trump says that he thinks banks discriminate against many conservatives, and the White House is preparing an executive order that'll instruct regulators to review banks for politicized or unlawful debanking practices. What are your thoughts on this?
So debanking has been one of the under-the-radar biggest issues facing America for at least 6, 7, 8 years, give or take. This has happened to a lot. I literally personally know people, many people actually, who have lost their bank accounts, their Venmo, PayPal, or they're just checking your credit card accounts due to their political beliefs. This has been happening actually for a very, very long time. It's really not that dissimilar to our issues here when it comes to big tech, when it comes to being deplatformed or censored or shadow banned there. It's a very similar dynamic happening when it comes to financial institutions. By the way, Gabriella, there's no logical reason why it necessarily has to stop just with banks. I mean, what about your local dentist, your local doctor? Are they going to stop serving you because you happen to be a Trump supporter there? So for all these reasons, I have actually been of the opinion, and I think a lot of conservatives will disagree with what I'm going to say, but I have actually been of the opinion that when it comes to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which we were just talking about in the context of higher education, which essentially has protected classes of nationality, of race, sex, gender, et cetera there, I actually think that rather than try to pull off the impossible of repealing these statutes, namely America's civil rights law, I think it would be a more prudent gesture to actually codify political belief as a protected class status. That would essentially mean that it would be illegal under America's civil rights laws to discriminate against a conservative when it comes to banking, legal services, dental services, accounting, any of the above there.